everybody. You are listening to the series, The Science of Getting Rich, on your favorite podcast. I am back again with another episode and a wonderful guest. Our guest for today is an amazing human being. She has a wonderful transformative journey, and the fact that she was able to overcome her obstacles and the traumatic events that have happened in her past life is commendable. She is now a 14-time best-selling author, an international speaker, and entrepreneur, as well as the founder of Make Success Happen. She is none other than Angelika Ullsperger. She's the founder of a transformative brand which is dedicated to helping people and businesses unlock their full potential. She's deeply involved in self development, growth, coaching, and creating resources for success. Angelika has not just empowered audience worldwide, but she's also redefined a lot of people's paths towards happiness. Her series 13 Steps to Riches has led her to work with some amazing people. And today she is in the documentary The Science of Getting Rich. So let's not waste more time and let's get started. So there you go, everybody. We have with us Angelika. Welcome, Angelika. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, especially now that I'm on with you. How are you doing today?
Good, not too bad. Thank you for asking. How was your day today?
My day was wonderful. I got to sleep in a tiny bit today, but then I spent the rest of the day doing like outreach, follow-ups, and then doing a little extra research
Oh, nice.
because I think that I'm going to be working on my next book, which is actually going to be about motivation.
Awesome. That is super cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I've heard a lot about you, Angelika, and of course, I want to know, and I know our listeners and our viewers would also love to know what's your secret. But before we get into that, about the documentary, The Science of Getting Rich, I've read about your story, but I want to know which principle from that book or that whole concept of the science of getting rich actually inspired you in whatever you do.
That's a really good question. I wrote down like one of my favorite principles,
Sure.
but I think the most important one is the law of attraction and energy because that's really what brings everything together.
Correct.
Just as all of the parts, you really need them together to have that full science and really get there. Like they're all important, but I just love the law of attraction. I think it's amazing.
You are already super successful and you've published almost 13 books and a lot more, right? Correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong there. And then
14,
you,
about to be 15.
oh, wow. There you go. There you go. And so, how does one use the law of attraction and how do you use it personally on your path towards success?
Okay, well, I'll start kind of from like where it started. So I was really going through a lot, and you know how there's kind of like a cliche of like when people are going through something, there's always somebody that's like, just think positively, just think positively. And then the people who aren't feeling well are like, that's ridiculous. And I was
Yeah.
that person for a little bit. I was like, that's ridiculous. What are a few words going to do for my health? I'm not just going to like speak myself into success. But, I was seeing all of these people and then people that were where I was that started and, progressed to a better place. So I said, okay, like let me just try it. Even if I don't believe in it, I should really at least try it. So that's when I started doing affirmations. And
Oh,
then I started realizing, that affirmations are a really strong way to start changing and rewiring your brain. And then I started speaking in definites. So not I want to write a book. I will write a book. So when
oh,
you,
there you go.
yeah, see, so when you say it like that, you make it a definite, it's a place and time. You just have to get there. Like it's just an amount of time. Like, as long as you don't give up, you keep going, you're going to get there. So that's what I really liked. And, I try to just make sure that I keep up with those. And,
Correct.
every time I just say, I want, not say, not I want, I will. And that was actually a really big game changer for me. I just started kind of, speaking my words like into reality. Because then
Right.
also, what you say, what you think about yourself subconsciously affects what you do.
Correct.
So, for example, if you think of yourself as like a thief, when you have the chance to steal, you're probably going to steal because, you see yourself as a thief. Whereas if you see yourself as someone who's hardworking and focused, you're more likely to be hardworking and focused.
True.
So a lot of it is also how you view yourself, and that changes how you perceive things.
Wow. Interesting. Now I'm gonna start telling everybody that I will write a book.
Yes, you like
That
I
is
said.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a really good suggestion out there. But Angelica, I know you just mentioned that you were not in a good place and then you sought out inspiration from someone who was already going through what you went through and then took inspiration from them and you wanted to be better and so you got out of it. So if you don't mind telling us, what was your journey like and how did you come out of it if it wasn't a good one?
Okay, yeah. So, when I was younger, like many of us, we make mistakes and we end up with people who aren't great for us. So, I ended up in some abusive relationships, which caused a lot of
Right.
trauma to, my just like my sense of self, my identity, and the way I work. Trauma not only can change that stuff, but actually changes you biologically and physiologically.
Correct.
So, I was kind of just dealing with that. And to the point where I actually missed over 400 days of school, like school days, like over a year's worth of single school days because I was just so depressed. I was just sleeping my life away. And then someone came into our life. His name was Scott. Scott was amazing. He was so into art and he was so lively and he was also very supportive. And I think part of it was because he had his demons too.
Right.
And, he was going through some stuff. And I thought, like, he was like really going through it in this instance. And I thought, okay, I'm going to call 911 and we're going to get him help, like, because he needs
Right.
it.
Right.
He deserves this help. So the cops came. The first thing they asked were, are there any hostages? And we said, no, there's no hostages, just me and my mom. I said, okay. So next thing you know, they shoot him and he falls to the ground. The first thing I do is like I go to run to him and my friend has to hold me back because they were about to tase me for trying to go towards him. Um, and they ended up letting him bleed out and they let him die under the guys that they said that were hostages. But there weren't any hostages. And then once somebody is like down, they're not really like they're not a threat anymore. So
Right.
they just let him die. And we lived down the street from a fire station, so there was an ambulance right there. But and that broke me. Not only because I saw it and I was there, but I was the one who made the phone call. Meaning, if I didn't
Mhm.
make the phone call, he could have still been alive. And that just broke me. That destroyed me. I wasn't doing great before, but it's like the cherry on top of the bad cake.
Right.
And I started sleeping even more. I was sleeping like sometimes even 20 hours a day. I would sleep, wake up to go somewhere else to go back to sleep. And, I started to notice the way that I was treating people, especially my mom and my best friend at the time, Morley's my roommate. I just wasn't being kind. And I started
Right.
to see the impact I was having. And something that I've always wanted to do is have a positive impact.
Yep.
So, it hurt me to see that since I was hurting them. Hurt people. And that was kind of, just like the switch. Like, okay, it's time, like we have to get out of bed. We have to do something now.
Right.
And coincidentally, COVID happened, which, I don't want to detract from the fact it was very bad and it was very detrimental for a lot of people.
Yep.
But for me, it was honestly kind of what I needed. So I had all of this time to focus on rebuilding myself.
Right.
So I just started clicking links, signing up for any like self-help seminar, any business development, was going to literally anything I could to the point where Google realized and they just started giving me all of these ads that were just, hey, come to our event. So
Oh
I started
yeah.
doing that.
Obviously. Yep.
Yeah. And then actually I met this guy named Eric Swanson who invited me into my first book series. So
Wow.
yes, and that's actually, how I ended up here. That was the catalyst for like the big change in my life.
Wow. First of all, so proud of you. And that takes a lot of courage for a person to go through that and come out even stronger on the other side. So kudos. And really, I feel so proud that you are a guest on the podcast, Angelika. So some really strong stuff there. I am sorry that you had to go through all of that, Angelica, but looking at the brighter side of this, like you mentioned, even though few things do not work out for some people, like COVID, for example, it helped you you found that direction and the right resources and the right path to walk on, which got you here. So, based on that experience of yours, what kept you going?
That's a really good question because there were a lot of times where I didn't want to keep going. Like there were times where I was like, like this is hard. But then I have to remember things like Howard Schultz. Like we've all heard of Starbucks, I'm sure.
Right, right.
He had to go to, I believe it was 246 different banks to get his first like loan for Starbucks, which
Oh,
means if he stopped after 200 tries, he stopped at 220, 240 tries, we wouldn't know the word Starbucks.
correct.
So that's one of the things. And then the other thing is that I really want to show people that no matter who you are, what you go through, that you can make success happen. So I could say that's also one of the driving forces is to show, all of the people who are out there, struggling with trauma or mental illness. Like I also have really, really bad ADHD. So I just want to be an example to show people like, hey, I know you're going through things, but you still can make success happen for yourself. I did it. And
Correct.
I've been a mess in the past. Like I've been a massive mess, but I did it. And if I can do it, like you can do it too.
Perfect. Absolutely beautiful. Angelica, everybody has, I think, they might phrase the question in a different way, but that's what they're trying to ask whenever you meet a person who's successful than you are, or just successful in general. I know everybody asks what's your secret and what got you here and all of that, but I want you to tell us what would be your one big suggestion or advice to someone who wants to be you.
Don't stop trying. That's how it is for anyone. The most successful people are the people who failed the most because, the people who don't get there, they fail and eventually they give up. So as long as you don't stop, you will get there. I think that is one of the most important things. I mean,
Yes.
there's so many important things I could go on and on about all of the different things like I've done, but just keep going. So my dad raised me with this phrase, try again. So every time, I was having a hard time, like I couldn't do something, try again. So as long as you keep trying and trying, you will get there. And I think that's amazing because like we all fail, we all mess up, but as long as you keep going, you can keep creating that future and, get to where you want to go.
Yep. Perfect. That is so beautiful, though. When you think about it, you didn't stop. You just went on, and with the books, the events, and everything that you did, and right now here you are. For all our listeners and our viewers, Angelica, what can you tell us about the documentary, The Science of Getting Rich?
Honestly, when I watched it, it inspired me and I'm in it. It's like after I watched it,
Right.
I felt so much more energized. It was kind of one of those movies that, fills you up and inspires you. There were a lot of good takeaways. And, so we hear all of these things like all the time in these personal development spaces.
Correct.
And sometimes the first few times it doesn't click, or you start to learn it, life happens, and it kind of goes to the back of your mind. Watching that movie brought things like to the front of my mind. For example, when you fear something, that's usually what you need to do first. So, when I woke up today, did the thing that I feared the most, and it gave me so much more motivation to tackle the day. It like empowered me, filled me up with energy, and kind of like, I can do it. It's also for self confidence and motivation. A big part of it is momentum and like how you feel about yourself. So just making sure that you take those actions.
Perfect. absolutely on point. And I think that ties back to the law of attraction and the law of abundance too. I had Emily on the show and she was also talking about the law of abundance. And she said you have to not just think that way, but you also have to act that way, which is exactly what you brought up in the first few minutes of our show here. So that's cool. I cannot wait. I've already ordered it, so I'm going to watch it tonight or maybe tomorrow. So yeah,
Oh,
I'm excited.
yes, you should be.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question to you would be, what's your favorite hack? Because I personally feel we cannot be motivated every single day for 365 days in a year, correct? Even if you take any goal, be it small, be it big, fitness or writing a book, or it can be anything. It's so hard to have the same kind of energy and motivation for 365 days. How do you do it? Or what's your hack?
So I do have a few things that I wrote down about motivation that I'd like to share in a little bit. But
Sure.
one of the biggest hacks for me is showing up. Like at least 50% of everything is showing up. And no matter how bad you feel, like sometimes it's hard to get things done. Showing up is still, relatively easy when you're feeling like that. And then also putting yourself in a position where you don't have the choice. I know it can sound like a little weird, but if you know something needs to get done and you also know like you just can't find that motivation for some reason, if you find a way to put yourself in the position to get it done, like where you don't have a choice, you'll end up
Right.
doing it. So
Right.
a big part of motivation is also your environment and what you surround yourself with.
Okay. So you said you have some pointers about motivation. I would love to know what those are.
Yeah, I wrote them down because I have so many thoughts in my brain. If I don't write some of them down, they're not gonna make their way back to the front of the brain in
Yep.
time. Oh, this is a really good example of, why doing all of this stuff helps you change. So it's really important to remember this little bamboo story.
Okay.
So bamboo is one of the fastest growing, plants. Like it grows like several inches in a day, I think, sometimes more. But it takes over a year, I believe it's over a year to sprout, to come up from the ground. So you have to spend every day watering it. You have to take your time to take care of it. And you're not going
Oh,
to see any differences for a while.
right.
As long as you, once again, you keep trying and you keep watering it, it's just a matter of time before it sprouts. And when it sprouts, it just keeps going. I wanted to put that out there before I forgot. But a big part of motivation is, your not only your environment, but you want to kind of put yourself into it. You want to
Right.
learn about it. And a really important part where we need to move the external motivation to internal motivation is we need to reflect on what
Right.
we learned. So, reflecting, like asking yourself questions about all of it and, looking at theories and that kind of things. Like I said, a lot of it has to do with, how we view ourselves.
Right.
So when you have a task that you either don't have the energy or you don't feel like you can do it, what you want to do, whichever one of the two it is, you want to take that and you want to trace it back to your identity and, see like what about my identity is making me unable to engage in the task. And, I had to go into my identity, find out why. Like, why is that something that I feel like it's not true? So you need
Right.
to find these like cognitive distortions and then you need to rework them into something different where you build up that positive identity. Okay,
Wow.
did that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. So, I'm gonna touch on the point that you mentioned about reflections as a first step. I think that takes a huge step and someone to be in that level to even sit and think about how I feel. So, what's one of the tip or one of the tools that you would suggest to start reflecting? I know one thing is meditation. That time when you're just sitting and not thinking about anything, somehow your thoughts go back to, and then you kind of indirectly start reflecting. Again, it's not meditation, but at least you're doing it mindfully. What did you do? How did you reflect on whatever happened or what actions you were going to take?
Mhm. So one of the things I reflected on is how my brain is set up and how that affects the way that I respond to things.
Right.
Because, once you understand how your brain works, you can work with it instead of against it. And I know this part's a little cliche, but honestly, journaling. Because there's a lot of different questions, and you can get journaling questions for literally anything, like mental health,
Perfect.
career
Yeah.
stuff, like health, like eating health, like
Yes.
literally questions for anything. So you want to find the questions that are related to the topic that you're working on, and you kind of want to go through them. Ideally, you want to write them down because when you write things down, your brain remembers them better.
Correct.
But if not, then it's something you can think about when you have that time. And then another thing is also podcasts. So
Correct.
listening to podcasts with actionable information. I've learned a lot about how I work and why I feel certain ways by listening to podcasts. So
Wow.
there's a lot of different ways to do it, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things where when you first try it, it's not going to be easy, but as long as you keep trying it, it's going to get easier as your brain, as those neural pathways form. So once those
Correct.
pathways start forming, it becomes easier to go that route.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah. That is such a good actionable task that you just gave us. You didn't just tell us go reflect on things and just do that, but you said how to do it, which I really appreciate. So thank you for that, Angelica.
You're welcome.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the happiness book that you've written. The series was 13 Steps to Riches.
Yes.
And I know the documentary is also all about getting rich and starting to gain more wealth, and whatever rich means to you, me, it can mean different things. But based off of all the books that you've written, all the workshops that you attend, and the events that you've been a part of, plus this documentary, what are top two things that you would suggest to anybody who's trying to get rich or build wealth?
Okay. Well, a big one is focus on providing value over everything. So, when I got into this area, I really wasn't focused on money because I was focused on like healing myself. So what I focused on other than healing myself was just providing value and just helping people in any way that I could. And I think it's because, I was being genuine and I wasn't doing it because I wanted money. There was no like hidden agenda. I was being genuine.
Right.
And I think that that did help. If you think about it like this, when you help people, there's like a little ripple effect.
Correct.
And, for example, I had given money to this homeless man one time. And when I was having a conversation, when he walked by, he thanked me. The person I was having that conversation with kind of like gave like a weird look. And I was like, like, this is what happened. Like I gave him money. He's thanking me. And he was like, oh. And then we were continuing the conversation and another homeless guy walked by and he stopped the guy, got money out of his wallet and he gave it. And I think there was a commercial, like it was years ago, but it was kind of, one person did something nice to someone else, and that kindness inspired that person to be kind to someone else. So it's putting that kindness into the world and helping people and knowing that it all comes back. It is like karmic marketing, which I thought that was a pretty cool term, but it's like just doing good, putting value first, and knowing it's going to come back around.
Okay. Tell me about this. What is your favorite project or book that you've worked on, and why?
I'd say the 13 Steps to Riches is one of my favorites because it's, was the catalyst for me, getting into this arena and meeting all of these amazing people. If it wasn't for that series and that project, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
And, that like it literally changed my life. And it also brought me into this environment surrounded by, these amazing people who are, more successful than me. And when you look at all of these people around you that are doing these things, it gives you, like, once again, it gives motivation to, reach that next level because you see people doing it and you're like, okay, this is what people are doing. Surrounding yourself with a bunch of lazy people who don't want to do anything, it's going to feel normal to not do anything as well. But when you
Correct.
see, like, when you see people doing things, you're like, okay, like maybe I should do something too. So
Yes.
I'd say that 13 Steps to Riches was one of the best projects.
Wow, that is so cool. Thank you for sharing that, Angelica. And then my last question to you would be, what do you think people usually lack in terms of inspiration, motivation, or anything that makes them different and being stuck wherever they are versus all these successful people that you just spoke about or you get a hangout with or even yourself?
See, there's a few things. So when we're growing up, the, the people in our environment, how they talk to us, so our parents, caregivers, teachers, that helps build our brain architecture. That helps to shape, how we think, how we talk to ourselves. So if you grew up around some mean people, you're going to be mean to yourself, and
Right,
you're going to unknowingly, become an obstacle for yourself.
right.
Being self-aware, understanding how you work.
Um,
It's having kind of like a child mindset. So, when we're children, we're curious, we're inquisitive, we're not afraid to fail, and we're not afraid to look stupid. And when we get older, we start, we feel shame. We don't want to like do anything too cringy. That stops us because we're afraid of coming off a certain way.
right,
And when you realize like it's okay to look stupid, and because that's how you grow, and it's fine to look stupid because when you see someone doing something a little silly, when they don't care, you're not gonna care. But if you're
exactly.
doing something and you're, like, shameful about it, like, people are gonna kinda, like, catch on to that.
Yeah,
But that's the biggest one is just having, like, a child's mindset. It's like you're so free, and then also when we grow up, we also stop having faith in ourselves and our dreams.
true.
Children don't do that. You ask a child what they wanna do, it's like, "I'm gonna go solve cancer."
Yeah.
And they're determined, like, they don't see a reason that they can't.
Yeah,
And when
yeah,
we get older, we start to create these reasons why we can't, whether they're, true or not. Like, our entire sense of self is really based off of, like, assumptions we've made about ourselves.
correct.
And it's like growing up, we start to, like, just take that away from ourselves. So you need to know that there's no limit. Like, the only limit is yourself. And once you can understand yourself and how to work with yourself, then you push that limit aside and it's all go. Like, it's the world's your oyster.
Wow, such beautiful, beautiful thoughts, Angelica. Thank you so much. And with that inspirational thought and suggestion, we are now at the end of our episode. I thank you so much for being on the show, Angelica, and sharing all your secrets and your journey, and for trusting us and all the listeners and viewers with the journey that you've been through, how you came out of your trauma, plus all the successful stories as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really love just being able to talk and then just having another chance to help people. Because sometimes you have to hear things more than once, and sometimes you hear something and it changes things for you. So any opportunity to do that for someone makes me very happy. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show, Angelica. And thank you for being with us tonight. I hope you have learned something useful and something that would help you transform your journey and get you one step closer to being rich and building wealth and being happy. If you want to know more, go check out the series and the playlists that I've linked here below. And if you haven't watched the documentary The Science of Getting Rich yet, then go check out the link in my description box below to get a discount and a bonus. I hope you've enjoyed this and stay tuned for more episodes in the series. Until then, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself. This is your host, Sheekha Singh, signing off. Bye.